Have you ever stopped to wonder that the toxic person in your life could actually be you? Or is it your mother? Is it your mother-in-law? Is it that best friend that you've had for the last 20 years? It's time to stop letting these toxic relationships ruin your life. If you want to change that, then this episode's for you.
All right, everyone, listen up. You think life's a smooth ride? Think again. From hot takes to vodka breaks, I'm here to serve it straight. No chaser, just a twist of lime. It's time to get real. Pour yourself a skinny bitch and get ready for a vodka lecture. From me, Krissy Marsh, unfiltered, unapologetic, and straight to the point. Get ready for your weekly shot of reality.
Sometimes you're in a toxic relationship and really have no clue that you're even in that relationship. I had a really similar situation where I was going out with a guy, and it's all those simple little things of a toxic relationship. It's not one big thing, it's all the little things that add up to make this relationship toxic. And you know what? It's not until you're out of it, sometimes you can look back into it and see what was the root of the cause. Look, I became really, really unhappy within this relationship. I was in there for about 2 years, but it was little things like, I'd get dressed and I'd be going out somewhere and they'd turn and go, oh, that's a bit dressed up for bowling. And that sounds like such a little thing, but that accumulated with a few little letdowns, a few little jabs at your appearance, a few times being cut off about what you were about to say. All of those things add up. And it's nothing that's like one gigantic, okay, well, he hasn't cheated on me. But it's just the way that they can sort of chip at your personality and really chip at the way you feel that can really change you. I ended up becoming a person that I didn't even recognize. I was so insecure. I'd be, waiting by the phone for that person to call. He'd really managed to absolutely change my entire personality. My friends could see it around me. My family could see it around me. Everyone's like, why are you still going out with this guy? Why are you still putting up with this? I'm like, well, he never really has done anything that wrong. And that's the problem with a toxic relationship. It's very, very hard to recognize because it's a slow chip and a slow burn. And it really does affect the essence and you as a person as a whole. And it's not until you wake up one day and you are so miserable and so unhappy and you just go, okay, well, this is it. It's actually this person's influence on me. And it doesn't have to be a boyfriend. It can be a best friend. Constant undermining of you. So what does undermining mean? Undermining is small little things that are chipping away at your character. And this is when you've got to be able to recognize a toxic relationship. And it really gets to a point where very few times you recognize it early on because you're in a lovely relationship or you've got a beautiful friend from school that you've been friends with for 15 years. So you put up with each other's little idiosyncrasies and little things that might annoy you. But it's not what annoys you about them. It's them chipping away at you. It's them pulling you up. It's them little criticisms constantly to a point where you become a person that you're not. And I think that's the biggest way to sit back now and recognize, does anyone that I'm with at any point in time, when I walk away from them, makes me feel less of a person? I want you to think about it right now. Is there anyone in your life when you walk away from being with them for an hour or even a week, you walk away and you don't feel great about yourself? How does that feel for you within yourself? They've not done one massive thing. A toxic relationship is the accumulation of a lot of tiny events that basically gets inside your soul and destroys you and starts bringing you down as a person. It's really hard to recognize these toxic relationships because until you're at a breaking point and until you realize you all of a sudden become a person that you don't even recognize. And a lot of people from the outside would have seen it a lot earlier on. But when you're in this relationship, there's nothing that bad that they've done. It's just the slow erosion of you and your personality. So how do you recognize it early enough that you can change it and make changes? And how do we build you back up after you've been in that toxic relationship and really feeling at the lowest of low? I think the first thing is really, being able to recognize that you are in a toxic relationship before it gets out of control and it really gets to a point where it is too late. And sometimes toxic relationships can be turned around. It just depends on how quickly you want to see it, how quickly you want to adjust to it, and how quickly you want to fix the situation. And it's really about what you will stand for. What are your boundaries? And that is so, so important to think, you know what, I'm a good person. I deserve to be treated well. It's not rocket science. Okay, this is Krissy's Kick Them to the Curb Signs of a Toxic Relationship. 1, unreliable. 2, disrespectful. 3, continually chipping away with negative comments and negative jabs. 4, backhanded compliments. 5, selfishness. 6, unpredictable behavior. Now that's a hard one. 7, unhappiness. 8 is when you really bring out the worst in each other. 9 is when you really build up this lack of trust within the relationship. 10, when there's no effort being made whatsoever within the relationship. I think the biggest one to look for is when there's no changes. You're bringing these little issues and these little problems up, and this person has no interest in changing, no interest in improving their behavior towards you, no interest in making any effort whatsoever. This is the telltale sign that you are now in a toxic relationship. Okay, so now you recognize it. Now I'm slowly, tearing you down. You're slowly going to be seeing and watching. And once you are open to start seeing these little chips that they're making at your personality and at your character, soon as you are open to it and actually going to acknowledge it, you will come, these things will be flooding towards you like a waterfall of negativity. And then all of a sudden you realize why you're unhappy, because this waterfall of negativity from this toxic person has become crystal clear. So what are you going to do about it now? I think the most important thing is to realize how bad this person has made you feel, how bad of a relationship you are actually in. I woke up after the relationship that I told you before, 4 years going out with this guy, and I was in such a bad way in terms of the character and the person I was. I knew that nothing was ever going to change. I'd taken 4 years trying to get this guy to change. It was never, ever going to change. So I needed to leave it. So I set a date in my head. Again, it's a goal. I never forget, it was the 16th of September. I was 25 years of age, and I set that date. I actually broke up with him 2 weeks earlier because I could not stand it anymore. Once you realize that level of toxicity, once you can see all those signs, all that unreliability, all those lies they're telling you, all the way that they're trying to make you feel, they never build you up, never give you a compliment. So what's the point in staying in a relationship like that? I was absolutely miserable. So I knew I had to get out and get out quickly. And yeah, it is really hard to make that decision. However, your situation mightn't be as drastic. That toxic person mightn't even realize that they're saying all these negative comments to you. So it might be as simple as saying, next time, they say something to you, go, you know what, that was really unkind what you said about me. And if they're like, oh my gosh, I never even realized, I'm so sorry, I'm definitely going to change, well, then maybe the toxicity of that relationship isn't too bad. However, if they do it again an hour later, you know that it's not where you want to be. You're never going to be happy in that relationship, and you have to acknowledge it and move on. And look, sometimes it's really hard making those tough decisions, but only you know. Once you see it for your own eyes, speak to some friends about it. Your friends might turn around and go, oh my God, we've seen this for the last 2 years. We've been trying to tell you. Most of the time it's people's families. I mean, it could be a family member that's, you've grown up with it all your life. They've constantly put you down, constantly told you that you're, lesser than them, that their achievements, they're always trying to boast and make themselves feel so much better than you. If that's the case, and that's been in your life for a very long time, you're not going to shut out a family member altogether. You might limit the time you have with them, and you might start to, as you get older, set some boundaries and go, you know what, I'm really sick of hearing how well you're doing in that job at the moment when I'm really struggling and I'm trying to find a job. So, there's certain ways in which you can work around this toxic friendship. I love it. You've actually acknowledged that you are in a toxic relationship. And you don't want to pack up, you don't want to leave. So where to from now? I think it's super important to start writing yourself lists and start writing yourself notes. Obviously, keep it personal so no one's going to find it. Often I say don't write things down that you don't want someone else to read, but maybe you do need to make a list of all the times that this person's making you feel. And it might be over a day, it might be over a week, it might be over a month. And then it's a matter of sitting down across from that person and saying, listen, I really want to give our relationship a chance. I really want to work things out between us, but this is how you're making me feel. And they might have no clue or no idea about that. And I looked at that 4-year relationship that I had, and although I never acknowledged how toxic it was, I was always trying to change the behavior. I'd be like, well, you told me you were going to ring and invite me to your mother's at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And now it's now Sunday morning, 24 hours later, and I hadn't heard from you and I had no clue where you were all night. And, I'm sitting at home going crazy because that person is making you feel like that. They've gone out for an all-night bender and not bothered to come home or call you. So of course you're going to feel, unhappy the next day. Of course you're not going to feel great. And then when you tell them that, the same thing happens the following weekend. Well, that's when you've really got to say, look, this person doesn't want to change. This person doesn't value our relationship, and this person doesn't think it's worth saving. So I think it's really important, and it's very easy to walk away when you have that pros and cons list from a toxic relationship. Because if you look at how that person's making you feel constantly, whereas if you're out with a friend that makes you feel great, they say they're going to be there at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they'll be there at 5. That reliability, that loyalty, that trust. It's like that whole emotional bank account. That person that makes you feel good is continually depositing money into that bank account. And I'm not talking dollars. You know what I'm talking. I'm talking emotional bank account. However, the toxic relationship is the person that's always taking more than you're giving, always taking more out, always being disrespectful, always making you feel shitty. And when you can weigh that up, and that's more often than not, you will know when it's time to leave. And you've got to be ready and use it to your advantage. Make a plan for yourself. Say, look, I'm going to give myself 5 months to either fix this or get out, or it might be a month, whatever time frame you want to work with. So then, you've totally dissed all your friends. You've totally stopped seeing all your other friendship groups, rather than just cutting them off altogether and having all that emotional strain with no one around to support you again. Start reaching out to your family again. Start building up that relationship. Start building up your friendship relationships again. Start calling your boyfriends and say, let's go out for a movie night. Start making those connections again and really rebuilding your life before you make that cut, because you will need people around you to support you, to make you feel good about yourself, because unfortunately a toxic relationship does strip you bare and strip you naked. I think the most important thing to think of in this relationship is happiness. And really, you've got to value your own happiness. And one thing my mother taught me, which I think is absolutely brilliant, only you can make you unhappy. So if you really think about that, it's, yes, you're in an unhappy relationship, but you can choose to enable that person to affect you and make you unhappy, or you can just choose, as of tomorrow, I'm going to be happy. And when someone's really sort of stripped you bare of all your happiness, because basically, life is to be lived. Life is to feel good about yourself, and then everyone you interact with, you feel good about it. So I think the most important thing is to start rebuilding that happiness within you. And if that means, taking an hour out to visit your grandmother, if that means, spending longer and really focusing on your career, because, there's got to be aspects of your life that are totally dismantled from this relationship. You've got to then slowly build those. So it might be, it's really exhausted you and you really haven't progressed at all with your career because you've been putting so much into this relationship and trying to make it work. So start focusing on other aspects of your life, like your friendship group. Start building those up. Look at your own physical health. That's probably been really depleted because of the emotional roller coaster that you've been on. Start, getting into physical exercise again. Start going for walks, meet up with friends. Start rebuilding your happiness. And, it can be something as simple as, taking up a new hobby, deciding to go and learn to play tennis. It's little diversions of, grabs at happiness whilst you're still in that relationship. And as I said, that person may want to change. And I think more often than not, they won't, but at least you're rebuilding your happiness and rebuilding your life before you make that decision, and really regaining your confidence. And half of it is just acknowledging it. It is really, really difficult when you're in that situation sometimes just to acknowledge it. And also to have a step-by-step plan on, what date you've set, when you're going to get out of it, what are the tools that are going to make it easier for you, getting a support network around you. And then, you think this is the worst thing in the world. I was just so obsessed with getting this guy to be in love with me and to treat me well and to treat me the way that I knew I'd been treated. Like, I'd been treated like a princess from when I was 14 in terms of guys I'd gone out with. I always had high expectations of people because I was really good in a relationship as well. So it was a mutual thing. Then all all of a sudden my standards, and I didn't even realize it happened over 4 years, went from that to absolutely rock bottom. I actually couldn't believe the person I had become. So it's not such a bad thing. Making a change, making a break is you're regaining your happiness. And that's the most important thing. And you have the strength within you because you can't sit there in, 6 months' time and say, I'm still miserable. Make those little changes today for you. This is your life. Don't go wasting another 2 years. You're not getting any younger. Get out and get amongst it. It could be the best thing that's ever happened to you. I know when I broke up out of that relationship, I ended up meeting, someone else quite soon after that taught me a lot about myself and why I'd been in that bad relationship. So everything's a learning experience. Don't look at it that you've wasted 4 years of your life. Look at it that you now have very defined benchmarks that you will never let anything go below for your next relationship, and you'll pick things up as they happen and not let this toxicity become so bad that you wake up and you're not the person you used to be. I think the biggest thing in any relationship, especially a toxic relationship, is being able to have some form of forgiveness. I'm not saying, forgive them and keep continually letting them come back and the whole behavior starts again. I think, forgiveness within yourself to sort of say, whether it's a friendship or whether it's a relationship, to have some form of closure for you. What I find really, really easy a lot of the time what I learned out of that really toxic relationship was I needed to close that book. I didn't want to open it and reanalyze it and why did I do this and why didn't I tell him at the time that he should have called me and why didn't I react better and why did I let him for 4 years, make me feel less of a person. I really closed that book and just moved it aside, not to be reopened, really to then move on into my new phase of regaining my happiness, regaining, the fun person that I always had been. And I think that's super important to be able to have some form of forgiveness. It doesn't have to be verbally to that person, but I think it's within yourself because you can never be truly happy if you're holding a grudge and, really angry at that person. You've just got to realize that person wasn't for you at that point in your life. You've got to move on and keep moving forward. And this is the problem. So many people get stuck in these toxic relationships because they want to analyze it, they want to fix it, they want to make it better. But sometimes things are just not able to be fixed. You're just not right for each other. You're just not the right fit. Friendships, just spend less time with that friend. Even if they've been a childhood friend for years and years and years, you realize that how they're making you feel is constantly unhappy. Go and branch out and make some new friends that you're going to feel fantastic around. So it's up to you to take control. You know what needs to be done. Go out there, analyze, write things down, reevaluate situations, tell people your expectations, tell people your benchmarks. Don't let people treat you how you don't want to be treated. And just remember, happiness is a choice. Choose happy. Before I sign off and you give me a question for a personal vodka lecture, I just want to share a poem about friendship that I wrote when I was 12. A friend is one who really cares, someone who shares your secrets, someone who even shares your pain, even when they have nothing to gain. A true friend is rare indeed. In fact, it is my mother's creed. Only 5 people in this wide land, you can count them on one hand. When you think about it, you don't need 10,000 friends. You only need a handful of friends that are going to treat you well and treat you right. So keep that in mind. That's going to affect your career. It's going to affect your happiness. It's going to affect your life, the people you surround yourself with. So it's super important to choose your friends wisely. It's really easy from the outside looking in at someone who may be in a toxic relationship. So send this to a friend that you think might be in need, because a lot of the time they won't even recognize it. Even if you change the life of one person and you help one person regain their happiness, it's going to make a big difference. And now it's time for my favorite part of the day, your personal vodka lecture. Okay, this one I really like. Lisa, how to find a job in your 50s. Super good question. You find a job in your 50s the same way you find a job when you're 18. And I know everyone's like, oh, but you don't understand. There's so much discrimination about age. No. If you're the right person for the job, you go in with that attitude. If you're 50 and you're up against a 20-year-old, if you're the best person for the job, you've got to show that person. The best way that I think to start with looking for a job is get a really, really good resume. So much is online these days, so you've got to have a one-pager. If it goes over more than one page, people are going to lose interest. Make sure you show it to a number of different people. Get them to check over it. Then decide what career, what path do you want to go down. If you decide you want to be a waitress, if you decide you want to be a nurse, you've obviously got to go and then target people in that field and start making connections. I think LinkedIn is an amazing tool in terms of finding a job. A lot of the time, a job doesn't come through an ad, it comes through a connection. I mentor a huge amount of people, and a lot of it is exactly for this reason, is to find a job. I actually use a Microsoft to-do list with them, or you can get a buddy or a mentor to sort of, to keep you on track with this. It could be your mom, it could be a friend, it's someone to sit and brainstorm. So Lisa, you're a nurse. You want to stay and continue in nursing. There's so many different fields within the nursing profession. You've got to go now, research the actual companies rather than sitting back and saying, look, I want to wait for a job advert. Times have changed. You go out and seek the companies you want to work for. You go and meet with them. You go and say, look, if there's anything coming up, here's my resume. I love the company. I love your value system. This is someone I really want to work for. So all of a sudden you become super proactive in terms of looking for, the field in which you want to be in. I mean, it was a classic. I went from foreign exchange to Ritz-Carlton hotels. One is basically, banking, broking to hospitality. Did I have the skill set for hospitality? Probably not. But I sold it to them that I did. Was used to dealing with clients. I was used to, dealing with budgets and forecasts. So you can change a job and, 360 degrees, decide to do something totally different. But you've obviously got to have the research into those companies to know that you are suitable for that position. So rather than waiting for a job advert to be put out, start researching. And through those connections, you might know someone that is in the, cosmetic injectables, and that's an area that you really want to go into. Go and meet with those companies within your local area where you live and say, I'm really looking for a job. This is my skill set. So be proactive in terms of making connections. Obviously, first thing is get a great resume. 2, try and find a mentor that'll help you stay on track. 3, brainstorming companies, lists, and it might be 5 different careers that you're looking for at the time. And you know what? I always believe you've got the right job for the right person at the right time. So you might fall into, you might have 4 resumes written all slightly different ways. One might be, to get into the hospitality industry. One might be to get into the finance industry, because really, a degree these days or qualifications do cross over into so many different areas. You might have, marketing skills that you can turn into marketing and sales, and it could be for a pharmaceutical company or it could be for a hospitality company. That skill set can be applied to so many different areas, and it's not until you start being proactive and you start brainstorming and looking at all the different fields you can go into and really sit back and speak to someone and say, okay, what is my ideal job? You might say, you know what, it is actually only working 3 days a week. It is actually, working for a pharmaceutical company in sales, where I've always been, in sales for medical devices. So you really sit down and it will take you there. If you start baby steps and every day do something to get you into that new job and that new career, and you might take something that you don't love. It's not your ideal job straight away, but you're much more employable when you're working than if you're not. Hope that's given you a good tip, Lisa, and can't wait to hear of your success. So this has been your vodka lecture. With Krissy Marsh. If you've gained anything at all out of this podcast, pass it on to a friend. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any more episodes. And if you want your personal vodka lecture, click on the link below and give me your question. This is all a part of your journey to make you a better version of yourself in this year. And all of these are baby steps that's going to rebuild your character and make you the best version that you can be.